welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our session today where we're going to be talking about systems, a bit of closing the loop on the journey that we started a few weeks ago, understanding the goals of development, individual behavior, how people behave within organizations, um, our own biases as development professionals, but also as people playing different roles. And today we're going to see how those people interact within what are called systems. I'm very grateful for those of you joining. Hopefully, the changing time didn't throw off many of for many, the intent to connect today, either through Zoom or through the linking streaming that we're doing. Hopefully you are able to join us right now, or you're able to watch the recording of this class at a later point. So I'm going to start with something very basic here, because the topic can be a bit complex. It may feel too macro sometimes or too theoretical. And that's not the point. Okay? The point is to see how these systems approaches that you, I'm sure, have heard of or have worked with in the past are actually at the base, at the most basic level, a foundation that can help you build strategies for collaboration and coalitions around complex issues. Hopefully you will find it useful. It is our commitment to give you enough tools to be able to use some of these ideas in the way that you interact with other actors in the system. So first of all, I want to give a warm welcome to everybody that is joining this recording, this class. And first of all, I also want to welcome Leah. Leah, I know that your voice is not at 100% right now, but would you like to say hi to everybody?
Hi everyone. Sorry, I'm a little bit sick. Very happy to be here.
Much appreciated, Leah, for being here and for your help in any case. Now, what Leah is going to be doing is throughout the class, she's going to be giving you a few prompts on the chat box. I'm going to try to make this class as interactive as possible. You can raise your hand and be able to participate and ask a question on the mic. You can also provide a few answers to some prompts that we're going to propose to you on the chat box. And if you are joining us through the live stream on LinkedIn, please add your answers to the prompts on the comment box. We will look through it. Remember, we record and consolidate everything because we want this class to reflect many of your thoughts and ideas too in a publication that we want to release later this year. So much appreciated for your participation and your engagement. So let's start with something, okay? Let's make this class very simple first. We all wear hats. We discussed a little bit about hats last week. We work in different kinds of organizations. So I would like you to actually use the chat box, introduce yourself, say where you come from, and tell us which hat do you currently wear most often. Are you or do you identify yourself as somebody working in government or public sector? Somebody working in civil society or NGOs, multilaterals, private sector, research, academia? Maybe you identify yourself as an activist. So regardless of what that is, that main hat that you identify with, please feel free to actually put that on the chat. If you, Leah, are able to put that on the chat as a question, fantastic. You probably already did it. It will be very helpful for us, in any case, in following through. And thank you for those that are already introducing a bit of this and saying a little bit about this. Okay. Thank you, Hanan. Hanan Hamad, pharmacist, entrepreneurship, and innovation policy expert from Egypt. Welcome. This is great. please feel free to share more throughout the course. So we're very glad that you are here. And of course, we'll distribute all the different material for you as we move forward. Okay? Now, use this opportunity where we're saying, we're asking you, tell us what is the main hat that you wear or that you feel identified with. Keep this close to yourself as you are answering many of the questions that are coming next. Okay? So we're going to do a bit of a warm-up reflection here. Okay? I want you, regardless of the definition of what you have in your head right now, that the word system means. Maybe for you, a system is the economic landscape in your country or in your region. Maybe when you think of systems, you think of the judiciary system or the justice system in your particular country. Maybe you're thinking about health. Maybe you're thinking about food systems. Okay, so I want you on the chat box to tell us, like, what is the system, however you understand it, that you struggle the most with, being in your job or personally? Is it about development and aid? Is it about energy and transition? Is it about health systems? Is it about democracy? Right? You tell us. Tell us what is the kind of system that you typically struggle the most with, that maybe frustrates you the most, being at work or at a personal level. Maybe it is the traffic system. Who knows? But share a little bit with us what you're doing. And don't forget, if you are connected through the live stream, to also share with us in the comment box what is the system that you struggle the most with. Okay? As we move forward with this lesson also, at any point, either you, Leah, call my attention to some of the answers because I'm not going to be able to see the chat box the whole time as I move through windows and all. Or if somebody wants to share a little bit about their stories with systems for the different prompts that we're going to have, please do so. Let Leah know. Right? Okay, so let's think about and let's just find some common ground around what these systems are. Okay? If you are new to this class, by the way, you will notice that every week, what we give you is a slide deck that looks very much like a manual. The slides that we prepare, and yes, we use AI to help us actually build these slides, right? Are meant to be on their own an element for you to understand many of the core concepts around. So in this sense, it's not like your typical PowerPoint or it doesn't follow the typical rules of PowerPoint that maybe you just have an image and it is in the explanation that you talk about the ideas that are reflected in that image. These try to be comprehensive because they are meant to be a standalone document for you to refer to at a later point. Hopefully you're finding useful, and of course, we're very happy to receive feedback about it over time. We're very happy to make them better for you. The other thing that you receive with this material is also an annotated bibliography. It's always a description of all the different resources that we recommend when talking, in this case, about systems and the connection to strategies, with a brief note on why is it that we recommend that particular resource. And whenever possible, we try those resources to be recent resources of like at the most 10 years old. If we recommend some older resources, it typically is because the reading is fundamental to the issue that is being discussed. Okay, so let's move forward. So just from this first slide, take away this message, right? Most of us as development practitioners seek change, but we operate inside institutions that typically are designed to resist change. So how do you move a system from the inside? That's the core question. Okay. So we very much talk about or refer to the status quo, right? The way that things are right now, of something that is, or at least feels as inamovible, right? Like as something that we are not able to change in general, something that has its own very specific gravity, that when somebody wants to change things, that is status quo, that abstract concept of status quo brings you down. But the truth is that that status quo depends on a number of different things, right? Like we have institutions, we have power structures, very important. We have feedback loops that feed precisely that status quo. We have also incentives, or what we typically call incentives. Sometimes those incentives, because the word incentives, because a bit of a common word, where we just put in that bucket different concepts. But it is important that we distinguish what specific incentives may be for a particular person than the way that somebody power structures or institutions may have, for example. So we had a class on collaboration and coalitions last week for a reason, because we were trying to introduce the idea that the challenges may be so complex that to actually affect change, you need to join others. You need to join others. You need to find the others that can either support the idea that you're pushing for, the reform that you're pushing for, but you also need to identify others that may block you and try to understand what their incentives are. You also need to identify those that may be neutral, but may become allies over time to what you're trying to do. The core point is that if we are going to aim to affect systems, we cannot do it alone. We cannot do it by themselves. And yet, many of the incentives around us make us try to work on our own part of the system, disconnected, uncoordinated. And that doesn't help. So, to shift the system, you must shift the coalition. Remember, if a system persists, it's because one, it feels comfortable, it feels like the right way to go, it feels sometimes as normal. But in the end, it is also because there are people that benefit from it, not necessarily or only economically, but also in terms of the bargaining power that they may have in their different relationships, the status that the current system assigns to them. You remember when we talk about civil society and civil society failures, for example, we talk among those failures the issue of status roles within civil society and issues of representation. So you have to identify these different people that can actually help in terms of affecting systems, the challenger, the hidden influencer, the defender. We talked a little bit about these different roles before. Before I continue, anybody wants to make any suggestion or comment, or are there any things on the chat that we should keep in mind, Leah?
Nothing yet, but everyone can unmute. So if you want to ask questions directly, they can speak.
Perfect. And by the way, guys, don't be shy. You can just say, Professor, can I ask something? And immediately, no problem. Okay, this class is for you, remember. So let's move to the next one. Okay. One of the core concepts that we're going to discuss today is the concept of leverage. You may have heard leverage all the way from like Greek philosophers, right? Like to engineering, depending on where you come from, right? But in the end is this point of support, this exact point in a particular system or in a particular set of mechanisms where you are able to, that you are able to use to create enough movement within that system. Okay? So the point is that that leverage may have different levels of depth. it may actually affect things only superficially, or it can also affect things at a deep level. So this spectrum, and this is something that we're going to introduce here, of from very shallow kind of intervention in the system to something deep that affects paradigms, is central to what we're going to discuss today. And for this, I'm following Donella Meadows' framework, both in terms of the definition that she has on systems, but also the ladder for that leverage that she proposes. Okay? So you may have a system. If you focus on shallow interventions, you're going to exert a lot of effort, it's true, but you're going to move things only a little bit. And we're going to talk a little bit about what we mean by shallow interventions, or what Donella Meadows means by shallow interventions. And then, ideally, we want to find the points of deep leverage. Those points, those areas in a particular system where some effort that is concerted, that is specific, that is targeted, can generate a very high movement in the system, a cascading of effects. Now, try to connect this idea only with what we discussed a couple of classes ago related to Overton windows. Okay? Overton windows, remember, is this opportunity, this moment in which your particular culture group is, where they as a group may be more open to an idea that in the past may have seemed impossible to actually pass. And typically Overton windows are applied to the discussion of reforms, policies, laws. But it can also be applied in general to the opportunity as a community, in this case, the development community, to actually push for deep leverage rather than only shallow interventions. This is the ladder that Donella Meadows proposes. And one of the key things that she suggests, for example, is that when you apply that framework to social innovation and development, what you have is that most of the times, most of our interventions led by one or two organizations, or based on this mechanistic view of development that we have had historically, where we develop one intervention that is well supported by evidence, and we just expect that by implementing it, we're going to change things, all right, which may happen in the short term, but many times are not sustained. They lack durability, precisely, is partially because most of the development interventions that we lead or that we push for with a lot of effort, with painful processes to secure funding, with painful processes to implement through different actors, etc., are focused in what is called the parameter type of leverage in Meadows. These are, and this is not a pejorative or an intention of being pejorative, but it is shallow in the sense that it doesn't affect the system overall. So these are important. Doesn't mean that we should not do them, right? Like bad issues related to budgets, taxes, training, and all. All these are important, but are not necessarily, or many times not likely, right? Like change a whole system in general. And yes, I'm trying to be provocative here. If you want to argue like against or in favor of that, please feel free to intervene. Okay? Now, if you go deeper in the ladder of leverage, you're going to look at this idea of feedback loops, which are the type of interventions that focus mainly on improving information flows between different actors, identifying who knows what in general. Then you may go to the next step in the ladder in terms of rules, laws, mandates, structural incentives. Most of the times, particularly when we push for reforms, structural reforms in our systems, right? Like we are focusing at the rule level, which is, of course, a very good thing to do. It is important. It is deeper than parameters of feedback loops, right? But the challenge here in the framework is that at least there are two additional steps in the leverage ladder that most of the times we don't even get to. One is the idea of goals, right? The defined purpose of the system. How is it that we redefine the purpose of everything that we're doing and the system around it? And then is the idea of paradigms, these unspoken mindsets, these underlying beliefs that sustain everything else. This is the deepest level of leverage. Now, if you have been following this class, and this is, I believe, our fifth session, you will realize that one of the things that we have been pushing for, especially, I mean, in the end, the whole purpose of us going back to the issue of legacy in international development is because we need a deeper review of what our goals and paradigms are. So when we talk about the importance of goals in class 2, okay, and how history has in many ways, because of this very slow change in the way that we see the purpose of what we do, that has shaped and limited the set of tools that we can use towards it. But as we are expanding and being a bit more daring in terms of the definition of the purpose of what we do in development, we also see that many people have been able to slowly but steady develop and propose new tools to deal with the challenges that become more evident when we become more ambitious also in our goals. And this is where this comes together. Most of our interventions in development, the deepest level that we touch, or what many times we try to get to, is the level of rules. Still, most of the interventions are a set of parameters what we're trying to affect. Now, with some of the intellectual leverage that we're going to propose today, right? Like we're going to try to see how and how does it look to change the perspective to finding those leverages at the level of goals or at the level of paradigms. Okay? 3 core messages for you then, right? Before we move on with an exercise, right? So first of all, systems resist change because there are very clear incentives for the different players in them to stabilize them. You want stability. We tend as humans to prioritize very much stability. And most people among us are afraid of change, even though we may have the awareness that change is necessary. Those reform or reform in general in the system requires leverage. And that leverage can actually be of different levels, from shallow to deep, from parameters to paradigms. And the third key point for you is that reform is political. And this is why coalitions matter. This is why we spend that time talking about collaboration and coalitions last class. Okay? So now, we're not that many today, and I know that the whole time difference has thrown things off. We'll send the summary, we'll send the notes, you'll have the materials. It's okay. But what I would like to participate to like pay for you to pay attention here is for us to go through an exercise on building together a stakeholder snap map. Okay, so Leah, if you can copy paste the problem that we're proposing to them, that will be great. So they have it in writing on the chat. But let me explain it what we're gonna do here. Okay, What you are going to do here is that you are going to quickly map a system. Okay? I want you to pick one system that you feel that you know well. If you work in health, go for health. If you work on social innovation, map it around social innovation. Try to describe it. Now, think about this system, and I want you to identify just three actors in that system. And I want you to write it on the chat, please. Okay, this is important for documentation. For those of you following us on the live stream, please work on this exercise too on the comment box. First, think of a system that you know well: health, education, nutrition, food systems, whatever you define as a system in your head that is relevant to the work that you do, all right? Or the work you would like to do at some point. And I want you to write on the chat box the name of three actors that you have identified. The first actor has to be an actor defending the status quo, defending the system as it is right now. The second actor, I want you to name or describe an actor that is pushing for change. And the third actor, this piece that many times we don't think about, that you are going to describe, is an actor that has a hidden influence in the system. Or if you want, a non-obvious influence in the system. Think about it. If you need help or you cannot think on a particular system, all right, let me propose one, all right? Use an example on democracy, all right? If a particular democracy or the lack of democracy in your country, right, it can be identified as a system, try to identify an actor that defends the system, an actor that is or could push for change, and an actor that has a hidden influence in the system and the way that it is. Please write your answers on the chat or the comment box in the live stream, right? And then I'm going to ask two or three of you to share a little bit about that. Let's take maybe a couple of minutes, if that is okay. Just write your answers and start thinking how you're going to describe this to the group. Kayona, please feel free to ask questions or share.
Sure. Thank you so much, Professor. I just wanted to ask a question
Please.
after the class is over. It's about just catching up on some of the materials, but I would like to talk to you afterwards, if that's okay.
Absolutely. No problem, Kayona. Just if in general for everybody, as you are completing the exercise, please go ahead. We share all the materials of the class. We actually have a web page with all the material of the class, including the recordings, the PDF file of the presentation that has been shared, and a bibliography on the topic. So you can continue your journey and you can focus readings on what you deem particularly important to you. And of course, right, like remember this is a free course, but it also includes office hours. If you are willing to have a conversation about some of the issues, like in going a bit more depth, just let me know. I can copy my email on the chat. We also share it with everybody when we send information about the course.
Sure. Thank you so much. I look forward to just chatting after. Thank you.
Super. All right, let's see if we have some answers already that we can look into. Thank you, Leah, for sharing that. Oh, okay, Hanan is having a few technical issues here, I see. Oh, great. Thank you, Kayuna, for sharing that. Try to think about one particular actor, three actors, right? As we were saying, in the health system in Canada that is particularly frustrating for you. Kayuna, will you be able to share a little bit about the actors that you will identify, even if it is very preliminary? Remember, we're all learning here, so it's not about like right or wrong answers.
Sure. Sure. Thank you. So the actors are, well, like the general public who have to often wait like 12 to 18 months for non-essential surgeries. Um, then there's like government policies and doctors and the system. There's like a big administrative burden on doctors because they have to do the administrative work and they don't have the staff to help, and then it costs a lot of money. And then also the government, for example, the provincial government of Ontario that is thinking sometimes about like privatizing the health care sector. So then people have to pay out of pocket. Um, and yeah, we just have like a lot of like there's a lot of high demand, but then there's staffing shortages and um, it's just like really hard, especially in Ontario. Like very, very long wait times and yeah, like COVID-19 really caused a lot of backlog of surgeries. So that's really just hard to deal with, especially.
That's super helpful. Much, much appreciated for that comment. Now, if I was to ask you, um, will you think of somebody for which the status quo, the way that things are working right now, um, works fine? Somebody that you feel that actually defends the fact that things are going the way that they are going, for whatever reason.
Um, yeah, so um, like systems that make a lot of money. So for instance, maybe the pharmaceutical industry, because like if people don't, like get the help that they need, or if they're unable to like see the doctor, say for something small, like I don't know, like some problem, maybe like for uh, gastric issues or whatever, I don't know, then they might not see the doctor. They might go to the store and take some sort of pill that they think might help, or they might buy some other product, and that could make them like worse. So instead of like seeing the doctor, um, they might just end up with some other problem.
Yeah, maybe it could be the pharmaceutical, that's for sure. It could be issues of insurance companies too, and the way that it works and the losses that are perceived if a reform was pushed. It could be even some doctors, right? Especially the ones that may have actually found in a way to go around the system and actually make good money with it, right? Like, I mean, I'm not trying to demonize here doctors, by the way, right? Like, but we're trying just to understand what is it. And also, this is not only based only on Canada, right? But I'm here reacting or suggesting also based on other things that we have seen in other places too, when a health reform has been trying to be pushed, um, and who is defending. Now, let me jump to the third question about the actors, right? Like, is there anybody that you will say in particular that will have a hidden influence in the system being positive or negative, that could actually, if they were convinced to support an effort of reform, potentially the reform could actually happen?
For instance, I think perhaps like um, so like people who are affected by like the job market, maybe young people who can't find jobs, or like graduate students who are in debt because they have like studied a lot and they can't find jobs, and like we are facing a crisis of like a shortage of medical professionals. So perhaps uh, like medical professionals from the US, for example, because the president has said something that like nursing degrees are not really important qualifications. So if American nurses no longer feel their education is valued in the States, then they could move over here. Um, and yeah, just like things like that. So like who is going to like fill health requirements and like needs in like remote parts of Canada. Um, you know, like yeah, so just like different things like that. The workforce.
That's great. Very helpful. Thank you so much. Much appreciating. Anybody else that would like to share a little bit about a system that is relevant to you, and the kind of actors, these kind of actors with three characteristics that we're asking about? Actors defending the system, actors pushing for change, and hidden actors, hidden influence actors. Um, Anybody that would like to refer? Again, I suggested also that if you don't have a system in mind, we can always use as an example democracy or the lack for it. So, um, Hanan, you were having some technical issues. I'm just checking if you are around and in case you miss also the questions. No, maybe your volume is it shows that you are connected though, but hopefully you are able to communicate. Let us know in any case, and please feel free to also answer in the chat to this particular prompt. All right. I'm seeing Victor, another familiar name from previous classes. Do you have anything to share, or were you late to the conversation, Victor? Oh, Victor, I guess I have to allow you to talk for some reason. I'm allowing you, anybody to talk in any case.
Okay, thank you. I think it's because I switched from my mobile phone to the laptop. That's why I could not.
No, it's very well. Were you able to hear the first part of the lecture and get a sense of the question? I'm happy to
Yes.
just give you a sense. Yeah.
Yes. I've been following, and probably something that I could say I've been involved in is the advocacy for youth engagement in governance in Kenya, because you see most of the issues are handled without the involvement of the youth, and it is always things that are being done for the youth and not with them. So myself and several other people have been coming up with online campaigns on X and all the other social media platforms to try and push for involvement of the youth in governance so that they are meaningfully engaged. Yeah, so it's not that things are always done on their behalf, but they actually take part in the entire governance process so that democracy is wholesome and there is inclusivity. However, there is resistance from the political class because of I think it destabilizes the status quo. So despite this resistance, I would say there's been some meaningful change because this call is actually across. so many of the youth are trying to push to be able to get into spaces where decisions are made. So it's not like it's done by one group of people. So many other Kenyan youth are trying as much as possible to get into the spaces. And much as there is no significant success at the moment, I would say there is progress, that at least young people are consulted and there is some attempt towards including their voices. Thank you.
That is fantastic. Thank you, Victor. It's so interesting also. If you, for example, both Cayone and Victor, I would love for you to be aware of the way that you have constructed this narrative, right, around what you believe. This is important because as we are going to move forward, we're going to be saying how important in these building coalitions for systemic change, right, like the role of narratives are, right? Also in being able to bring together people of different perspectives. And the first step in that narrative is precisely the way that we understand the problem. And this is key also because if you think about it, every time that we talk about complex challenges or complex systems, we tend to go to a narrative where there are going to be, in many ways, good guys and bad guys, right? Like, because it's the typical where this is not you or me. Like we all grew up doing that, like and thinking about this. Now, how is it that we can build our narrative in a strategic way that is able also to recruit some people that may not be supporting your effort right now, but potentially could, with appropriate incentives or with the key narrative, where they are also, in some cases, able to save face. And this is also very important, especially when you try to attract the private sector, which is going to be key at some point for different kind of challenges. It depends, of course, of the problem at hand. So I just wanted to point out to that, right? Like, and how both of you, from different directions and on different topics, you got to build a story around this particular system, the challenges, and who seem to be the ones that are either defending the existing system, that may have a hidden influence, right? And who are the people that are actually supporting reform. This is the first step when you are thinking about systems and how to tackling them through a strategy. Okay? And that should inform also how is it that you're going to be approaching coalitions to be able to affect the system in a deeper way, to move from parameters towards paradigms. Important. It doesn't mean, this is not a message from this class, all right? It's not that we should all just do or aim for paradigm change. Paradigm change is extremely important, particularly for durability. Working on parameters, working on feedback, working on rules, it has a lot of meaning. It is important. But the same way that in class 2, we talk about the evolution of the idea of microfinance from only microlending to an ecosystem of interventions, and that now we don't think about it as 6, 7, 8 different interventions, but just as one called microfinance, right? I share that example or that evolution with you for a reason, to show that it is possible without necessarily just getting lost in that, oh, well, I'm going to work on this intervention, the other guy is going to work in the second, and the third, and the fourth, right? Think about how we used to do things 50, 60 years ago in development, and we do them now. Now we take things for granted. But 50, 60 years ago, even though it seems very hard right now, the possibilities of what could be possible were perceived as much, much minor or less decades ago. And still things happen, regardless of all the mess that it is out there right now. Okay, let's keep that as perspective in any case. So we're going to move here because we're only a few connected on Zoom. So we're going to do this exercise as a group here. Okay. This is, again, you're going to see that I'm emphasizing having you present and you share, because you don't want this to be just a monologue where I'm just giving you this and I send you the material. Try to use this space, if you're already investing time in this, to get the most out of it, hopefully. So if you don't mind, Leah, if you can share the prompts for the group exercise that we have on the protocol, that would be great. This is the breakout exercise that we had been planned, but maybe let's just do it here as a group, all right? Because there were not that many. We don't need to actually have many breakout rooms right here, okay? So here's your prompts, okay? And Leah is gonna copy them on the chat box. You have one concrete scenario, and I'm gonna impose a scenario here, right? Like just for the sake of the exercise. But you can apply this to anything, right? To any other challenge, any other complex challenge that you are facing in your work, right? So the challenge is building a space for citizen engagement in a context of democratic backsliding, okay? You can decide for context, right? If we are talking about a democracy that is having some issues, right? Or a country that is perceived as an autocracy where there's very limited civic space. Of course, the degrees of freedom that you may have to try things is going to vary, of course, right? Like, but let's just focus on this particular scenario, right? Like that, which the truth is like it could apply to any country in the world, within the United States, okay? Now, if that is the scenario, the context, I want you to, like, as a group, we're going to discuss one question. How could a reformer, you with others, right, move from parameter change to deeper system change? What does that mean? And one way to approach this conversation, maybe, is to do it in stages. We can think first, what is it that it will mean, actually, to have some parameter change or affecting feedback loops around democracy. And then we can think about the type of rules and goals that could be influenced over time, right? Like to be able to have some leverage from that side. And finally, we can think, what does it mean in the end about paradigms when we talk about paradigms? And you can, of course, ask questions about each one of them. But we're going to try to have this as a very practical exercise. We're going to do it in just probably 10 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes, to be able to exchange. And I will invite everybody else that has not participated yet also to just share a little bit about this, right? Like, so again, the scenario is the following, right? You imagine that you are in a context, right, of a system with democratic backsliding, all right? And your goal is to build slowly, fast, steady, however you want, space for citizen engagement in that particular context. What are the kind of things that come to mind? You can use the chat or you can comment also and use the microphone. I guess that we have given everyone the ability to speak on the chat, but let me know if that is not the case, please. And welcome, Anurada. Mona, allow to talk to anybody that has joined. Okay, Hanan, you also have there. I'm seeing here that I have that ability in any case. So again, if I'm asking you what kind of actions, interventions you can take to promote citizen engagement in an environment of democratic backsliding, what are the kind of things that come to mind first? Cayona, you wanted to participate?
Sure. So yeah, so I guess like when we think about democratic backsliding, I suppose like first of all, like we have to think about like where we are located in the world. Like different countries will have, I think, like different, um, like degrees of democratic backsliding and all, and every country can have its own political system. Um, but say, for example, taking the North American context, um, like like maybe like um, participating in like marches, and doing advocacy, like doing outreach, to like gain people's awareness and gain like attraction, writing op-eds, um, trying to like maybe like speak to the media and things like that. Like those can be good first steps to break the ice and like gain traction for an issue. And then it might take years of like lobbying and advocacy to move from parameters to like the rules and the goals. Um, and yeah.
That's very important. Especially, I want to emphasize what you said last, because that is the moment in which you started from a list of different interventions that ideally will be coordinated, right? To how is that those can affect different levels. And you go to the level of laws or mandates, right? Like to influence in any case, which is extremely important, right? Here. Because I would like, for example, that next, if you think about all these different types of interventions that you were starting to suggest, and I appreciate very much that you get us started in this conversation. I'm sure that others are going to have some other ideas there and other kind of things that can be done, right? But those different things in terms of awareness, marches, writing op-eds, media engagement that you mentioned are very important, right? Like, because they are not just isolated things, but they also call attention of others. Now, if you think about in a context in which people may feel either afraid of participate or may feel that my personal participation or engagement is not going to make a difference, seeing others doing it can make a huge difference. Doesn't mean that it's going to happen. And more importantly, depending on the context too, doesn't mean that it's going to happen overnight, right? But it is very much how many times movements just start, like in terms of a spark. Now, I want you to think, what is it that it takes for that spark to continue, to hit the lumber and actually become something even more powerful and effective? Think about it. In the meantime, I would like to call on anybody, please. Of course, I want to avoid the finger crossing, but I'm very eager to hear other opinions, right? Like, what kind of things can we do to move from parameters deeper into the ladder of metals? Do I dare, Lauren? Can I provoke you there? Welcome, Lauren, by the way. You're muted, Lauren. Or you're thinking, maybe. That's fine. No, I don't hear Lauren. Tai.
Anurada has her hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, what? Am I missing something?
Okay.
Oh,
So do
Anurada,
you want me
Anurada.
to speak? Yeah. Do
Go
you
ahead.
want me to speak?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, good morning. So it's I missed the first part of the discussion. I'm sorry, I mistook the timings, but I know what this is about. So it's nice to contribute to this talk.
Mhm.
It's a very good pertinent question that peer learning is very important, and how could a reform move from a parameter change to a systems change? So in the context of India, I worked in most countries which are developing and developed, but I'm more happy to discuss India here for the knowledge of everyone. So, the citizens' participation, as Mario has been emphasizing upon, a lot of legislations in India which talks about urban local government and rural local governments has a provision by which citizens can voice concerns at the the basic level of the governance. So most citizens do participate at that level. But in terms of a recent contemporary development, I think the Right to Information Act of 2005, which India passed, has given a major systems-based change where a legislation by which you can question the government on any matters other than certain classified matters of defense and personal informations. But I think that's been very effective because I've been a part of the United Nations Development Program, bringing this legislation into purpose in India, and I think it's one of the strongest instruments. So I think it's there in most countries as public information acts, but in India it's called the Right to Information Act. So I think this is one of the most important things. But in my experience, also having to brought up the Citizens Charter to purpose within a lot of independent public institutions, where the government puts up a particular standard, and the government pays for penalty for any grievances that is not settled on a daily basis. I think Citizens Charter is a voice, not just to hear them, but to enable them to feel that the government really takes care of them. I think that's a phenomenal development which also happened in the 2000s. But beyond that, I think Citizens Report Card is one which has been active for some time, but not now. It's an independent-led citizens assessment of the public performance, public sector performance in different categories, say infrastructure and different things where they get scores, like starting from a particular grade to another grade, whether it's deteriorate or become better. So that is normally publicly, published. So I think these are very strong and very easy to participate, kind of this being an enabler to get their voices heard. But most schemes in India have a mandate. Like whenever there is a master plan, whenever there is an environment plan, there's a mandate to publish it in a important on websites and important classified newspapers, and calling for objections and suggestions for 60 days. And all these grievances need to be replied, and those have to be sorted, and those are statutory mechanisms by which somebody can object to a particular plan by means of law. So these are normally followed in all bigger plans where common people are affected, or it's a general public good that is being affected. Apart from this, I think there are a lot of impact stories. If you see a lot of development organizations have worked in India, a lot of those impact stories are being propagated by bigger media groups, including the BBC, which voices like a behavioral change or things that have brought about difference in a common man's life. So I think these impact stories also depict a lot of negative stories. So which means that there is a joint responsibility of the public sector and the citizens to work together. So I think that's a great thing to bring in citizens' participation. Yet another example is the grievance redressal mechanism, by which there's a lot of grievances which can be stated. I do not know whether it works perfectly. I've also had a few hiccups, but there does exist grievance redressal mechanism by which you can put up your grievances and voice your concerns. But in final, one reform that I'm very optimistic and which will work is, maybe Maria will be very excited about this discussion, I think. In evaluation, most of the time, when we even do a evaluation for a donor's sake or for a government's sake, we normally take a very standardized approach. But I think recently there's a lot of concerns among evaluation specialists to add common people's perspectives and citizens' experiences about development initiatives. I think that will be a game changer in taking a common man's perception into a program document, which ultimately they are also a taxpayer and they're also a beneficiary, or maybe they are a loser also. So I think that is a reform which is totally evolving in many countries. I think India is also has certain prospects of taking this on. So, but in total, I think India has got something significant that I'm also very happy to share here. Is certain initiatives like the RT, Right to Information, and the Citizens Charter. Those have been successful, led by independent institutions, and they have been, standardized within as part of the system. So I think it's very important for a government to take cognizance of the best practices that would affect, citizen-centric governance. and also bring about innovation and ease of living kind of a participatory system. So this is my reflection about the India perspective in terms of making parameter level change to a systems level change.
That's
Thank
fine.
you.
Thank you very much, Anuradha, for sharing that and also insights from the experience in India. This is extremely valuable. This is exactly what we're looking for also.
Yeah. Thank you.
Victor also for sharing from Kenya also before. Um, let me provoke you with something, right? Like, and this is because of a core message that I want to leave you with in this class, right? Like, you have seen closely how these processes have panned out over time, and they are definitely important steps and progress. For example, let me take the case of the Rights of Information Act. Okay. Uh, Something that I'm sure, not knowing exactly the story of how it worked out in India, right? Like, it was probably not easy in many ways to approve. Many probably had been discussed among different circles from think tanks and academia and civil society for a long time. For different reasons, it didn't happen, and eventually it does happen. Does the story end there? Or, to change the question a little bit, how well it is working in India, for example, in your perspective?
Well, certain of the, I think certain like the legislation part, I think it's been phenomenal because normally, as I mentioned last week also, most of the time we take systems existence as a foolproof mechanism for a system to have reform, but it doesn't affect it as much as it should. So I think right to information, definitely it has. I myself have read and I have also done evaluation of how it has worked 5 years beyond the legislation's thing. And it's been almost like 20 years, 2 decades now. I think it's quite purposeful. But in terms of grievance redressal, I'm not very sure because I've had hiccups. But I think the systems are useful, but not so effective. Citizens Charter, I'm not very sure because that was a donor-driven initiative. We tried a few local governments, and those were given, those were recorded as to be highly remarkable developments. Putting citizen centric, like putting the citizen as the foremost important person. The thing I am not very sure whether it continues to be sustainable, to be honest. But there are a lot of things like even citizens report card, those are ad hoc because those are led by external. But the moment these get, I'm just citing certain examples, but definitely the legislation as part of RTI and certain things like calling for objections and suggestions for every developmental program that gives a space to officially and statutorily make a reflection of what you stand for and what you're objecting to. So that is definitely there. But in terms of NGOs, non-governmental participation and media participation, I think there has been a phenomenal change because I've also written a few things for BBC Impact and a lot of groundbreaking, shifts, whether it has been a combination of public sector and the citizens, civil society working together. There's been phenomenal shift in determining how a citizens movement gets shifted from a, almost negative impact to a positive development. So I think definitely participation of civil society makes a difference here. And I think the civil society side, there should be a lot. I'm not fully aware of what has been the nitty gritty developments, but they have made a lot of difference in terms of how citizens' voice. And I think I missed out an important thing. A lot of parliamentarians, they play a very good role in, putting that to a forefront. Well, all systems may have certain backlogs, but I think that is also a good thing until, an advocacy is always an external, extrinsic thing, right? But in a democracy, I think intrinsic leadership taking an issue ahead, I think that has been to some extent, like for instance, farmers' issue has been a bigger issue. I think that has been largely affected by discussions in the parliament. So I think when common man take a place and are part of the system, I think it affects. And I think a lot of disadvantaged people women who represent marginal communities in the parliament. I think some of them have done incredible work. So maybe these are few things that work, but I know there is a lot that can be done to make it like more incredible and make sure it works for everyone. So I think that is my reflection about this.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you very much, Anuradha. This is very
Yeah.
helpful. And part of what I wanted also by provoking with this question, like for you to complete a bit of the story that you were telling us about India, is as a very personal perspective on what we do in development, is that you need to be very much comfortable with the idea that the job never ends. There are people that, for very good reasons, can spend in different countries or have spent in their countries their whole lives pushing for a very important reform, for example, related to right of information and Right of Information Act, or a citizen charter. And maybe they see it happening, maybe they don't. But even if they see it happening, right, the effort doesn't end there. Even though you may feel like that relief is like, we did it. It's time to celebrate. Well, celebrate. But then be vigilant, because that particular effort that you were successful at may actually be, even after the fact that it has been approved, it may be either attacked, undermined, or captured. Attacked, undermined, or captured. And here's the thing in the reflection on the systems work, that even though we have been able to move from parameters, awareness campaign, information to people about the importance of these processes and all, you may actually go through feedback loops, enhancing the information flows for people, even though you may not have a law to guarantee that how mandatory those flows should be, right? Or you may actually be able to institute a law, like through the support of different parts of society, right? Like through alliances in Congress, right? Or a strong support from different members in the government, in the private sector, right? Even after that, the implementation of that law, the way that it's actually used, may actually undermine the whole concept and even reduce support among many of those that fought for it. You need to show that that has been achieved is actually working. And this is why it is important always to keep as a perspective, even if you personally are not going to be able to control how far the strategy goes, maybe you are able to be part of this through a concerted effort, right? Building coalitions and so. But it is important that we do not lose sight of the importance of building leverage at the goal level and at the paradigm level. Examples, all right? You may actually go to the fact of approving laws that hopefully will be enforced, hopefully will be implemented properly. And that is going to depend also on how deep your alliances are and like the coalition and how much people have ownership of this, right? But then comes the idea of like, why is it that we're doing this? Is our objective growth? Is our objective stability? Is it our objective agency and empowerment, right? Because that is gonna set in a different way the ambition on the next step, or the vigilance on what we have achieved in the first 3 steps of the ladder. Okay, and we're going to talk in a moment a little bit, just to close, about, for example, some of the work that Mariana Mazzucato is doing recently in terms of like mission-driven economies, right? Like, which is very much aimed at this goal level, internalizing these missions particularly in public sector, but not only. And then is the discussion about the paradigms, right? Like how is it that we understand the problem itself? In this case, right, like we are concerned about democratic backsliding. But what is it? What is the type of democracy really that we're aiming for? And why? That's why this goes after the goals, right? So then you have recent discussions, for example, around the concept of citizen assemblies, right? And empowering citizen assemblies, not just as a figurative thing, as a consultative body, and so on. Including like discussions about the potential of having like random draws of citizens for a short period of time, maybe 6 months, actually being in charge of parliaments or like having a larger role in parliaments. And that actually created a lot of even fear among many people because, oh no, you're going to empower like a crowd, etc., and it's going to be a disaster. But the truth is also that it is something very threatening to the understanding that we have on democracy based on political parties. But in places where political parties are simply not working or are captured or the system doesn't fly, right? Like you may need to start considering other ways to shape the way that we understand democracy and how democracy can happen. Remember, in the end, it is about trust. It's about the social contract that is or not working for people. And how is it or not working from people may lead to a disengagement that inevitably makes things easier for those that want to capture that particular system. Remember one thing that I mentioned on the first class, all right? Complex issues. When we're pushing for something, a reform, a set of actions that are going to benefit a lot of people, but by doing that, we're affecting the status, the influence of a smaller group of people. Typically, that smaller group of people have to face lower coordination costs to try to block you or to try to make that your reform, even if successful at the level of rules, actually is implemented. And there are countless examples of that. So that can be very frustrating for somebody that works in development. But the truth is that, as I was saying, the job never ends. And we have to make a peace with that. It doesn't mean that we have to just accept whatever happens, but we have to make a peace with that. Because really the job never ends. All right, before getting too philosophical. Let me wrap up and thank you very much for everybody that has participated. And hopefully, like we'll have more of you participating also in other sessions. Send us questions, send us your comments. We'll review your chat box, right? Like, and we'll let you know also like if there's an opportunity to continue with some of the ideas that you have suggested here. But for now, let me just really quickly leave you with a couple of thoughts, right? And then you can go back, as I was mentioning to those of you that were late. Each one of these decks is very detailed and has a bibliography companion for a reason, because what I want is you to use this as a reference point. Obviously, you're not going to be able to look at the 25 different books and articles that I'm going to suggest on this topic. But because it's an annotated bibliography, if you are particularly interested in an issue, you should be able to follow that thread and look for more information about it. Don't take just my word for granted, okay? Look at this idea of the curve, okay? These shifts are accumulations. And I'm leaving you with this graph here just because I need you to understand, the message is not, we should focus on changing paradigms and not focusing on sharing parameters. Not true. Everything is connected. And different actors in the system may be in a different possibility, right? Opportunity to affect different parts, different types of levers in the system. But we should not keep off the eye on the ambition of being able to shape goals and paradigms in particular. Okay? So I'll leave you with that thought. Go back to this slide and reflect on this. Okay? Now, I use a lot in these lectures in what comes when we look at examples, like concrete issues. We're going to talk about governance. We're going to talk about state capture. We're going to talk about technology and innovation. All right. But we're going to use a few intellectual anchors on systems here. The three ones that I would like to propose, right, are Yuanyuan Ang, Mariana Mazzucato, and Elinor Ostrom. Okay. This is very hard actually to try to summarize what is their strategy, right? Like what they are actually suggesting in terms of like how to approach the system, right? Yuanyuan Ang very much focuses on adaptive reform, right? And when you think about what are the mechanisms for adaptive reform, some key concepts involve the improvisation inside imperfect institutions. And she did a lot of this analysis in China, right? But has been bringing this concept of adaptive political economy, right? Like more general out there. Mariana Mazzucato at UCL with mission-oriented direction, right? Like, and how in particularly she focuses on redirecting system goals from the center. So let's have clear missions, right? Like for what we want to accomplish, right? And the way how the resources need to be organized towards that mission, right? It's a re-engineering. And she promotes this and discusses it with heads of state, ministries, and all in different countries. Well, Elinor Ostrom, right, the Nobel Prize, right, like before that, she focused very much on this concept of polycentric governance. We'll talk a bit more of this when we talk actually about governance. And it's the idea that the same way that we identified different nodes in the class last week, all right, how you are able to promote experimentation across different nodes and, right, over time, being able to generate, build a case, exchange between different units, right? Like, so you generate a contagion effect that in the end forces the center also to adapt and to reform. Okay? 3 intellectual levers there, all right, that I would like you to keep an eye on because we're going to come back to them during the rest of the course. Okay? This is just a bit more of detail on how do you do improvisation from inside. This is around the framework that Yuanyuan Ang proposes, for example. Yuanyuan Ang is very close to us, actually, and I'm going to get to meet her in person for the first time in a month. I'm very excited, actually, in April. Key insight, system change often begins with improvisation inside imperfect institutions. And you have to allow for trial and error, right? Like building the incentives for that. And it's very interesting how it's not that the Chinese government, somebody in the Chinese government thought, this is the way that we're going to do it, right? Like, but what she brings is this perspective when she tries to understand how is it that it ended up working for many of the policies that they were pushing at the local level, right? And the kind of incentives that were given within the party. Okay? Look a bit more about mission-oriented systems and how you actually redirect the goal. Now, the work of Mariana Mazzucato very much focuses on public institutions, right? But she emphasizes that these changes need coalitions, need collaboration, where you also engage the private sector and civil society. Okay? But public institutions have that particular power, right? Are able, right, if they have the right orientation, mission in redirecting the resources, if there's enough political will to try this, right, to actually redirect entire systems in their goals, right, through specific missions. Look at the map from isolated misaligned actors to an alignment that is very much focused on specific missions. Okay? Challenges that are extremely complex and macro, like climate action, energy transition, right? You need to align civil society, private sector, and public sector. Okay? And this is about Eleanor Armstrong, right? Like this idea, as I was mentioning about how is it that you generate, if you want, a lab, an experimentation from the nuts. We're going to talk in this class about the very humble, right? Like, I don't know where it's going to take us, but this is the approach that we're taking to our work, for example, in Peru at the subnational level. Can we identify some regions, right? Based on specific leadership, right? And the opportunity, the timing in the political cycle, right? Like where we can work with a few champions from different sectors, right? For engaging different parts of society towards the implementation of local development plans. That is the big question that we're exploring. And this is very much the framework, the inspiration that we're using for it. It's not perfect, but we're trying. Okay? So again, this tries to map, right? Like where is it that each one of these different intellectual anchors seem to focus more, okay? So you see how Ostrom very much looks at the range between parameters and rules, very much. Mazzucato very much at the level of goals and goal leverages, right? Very much. And Ank also a little bit all over the place. Now, that level towards paradigms is the next level, and that varies, right? Like, and that is not going to be the same for each one. You can argue, and maybe if I had in the room Yuan Ank or Mariana Mazzucato, they will probably argue that like what they are trying to do in the end is trying to affect the paradigm, okay? And that's fine. I mean, I don't want to get there, right, necessarily. But my point is that how do you diversify your strategy and build an ecosystem approach to the problem, right? As we discussed when we discussed, for example, the ecological model 2 classes ago. You remember Lori Heise? Like how important it is to build this ecosystem approach so you actually have a better chance at affecting paradigms, right? More details here in these slides, right? But I want to leave you with this idea that comes actually from class 1. Tell me, do you see this slide with the 6 different things to consider? Just want a confirmation because I transition PDFs. Are you seeing consider system thinking, embrace complexity?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Kayona. Wonderful. This is a slide that I shared on class 1. And I told you then, this is the most important slide of the whole course. And I was not kidding. Because when we are looking at complex, wicked, there are all these different terminologies, right, in the literature, development problems, I want you to be very much aware, right, about how far are you going on these points. Consider systems thinking. And now you know that system thinking means identifying leverage points, identifying the key actors and how they interact. What is the kind of coalition that you need to build? That is a strategic mindset. That is thinking in strategic terms on a strategy that focuses not only on just a measure that helps you get the next round of funding, but on actually results that are durable, that build resilience over time. The second is that you cannot really do that if you don't embrace complexity. And that goes to the point that I was saying before, right? The job in many ways, it never ends. And maybe you make progress on one part of the puzzle, right? But guess what? The rest of the puzzle fights back. It's going to try to spit that piece that you were able to push. The third which we do not do enough. You're working on this. You're actually pushing. You're achieving results, but you're also messing with many people that are going to fight back, either because they are comfortable or because they have normalized the status quo, or because they think that they are going to be particularly affected by what you are trying and what you are fighting for. So then you have to also understand how even your own organization or yourself contribute to the problem. The next, and we're going to see when we talk about learning here, right? This is a missing piece still in what we're doing. It's like, how is it that we build double, even triple loops, right, for learning? How is it that we weave these and react to information that we're getting from the system? Okay, and this is extremely important. 5, integrate your systems mapping in your theory of change. Look at this. We haven't talked about theory of change since class 1, and that is on purpose. The theory of change should come after you have a sense of what is the strategy that you want to follow. Because otherwise, the temptation is always going to be that your theory of change at the level of activities is going to be stuck in the parameter side of levers. And finally, you need to work with others. You may not like it. Maybe it makes you uncomfortable. All right. And that is why, for example, if we were in a classroom, in a physical classroom, right, I will actually put you in completely random groups, because you need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, at least in the beginning, in terms of collaboration. And knowing even that at some point, you may be the one that needs to pull the car, at least at first. And you are going to need to be very proactive in identifying allies too. Things are not just going to happen for you. Okay? That's the importance of building coalitions for change. So then I just leave you with this message. You are a system actor. The system is not going to change because we criticize it, right? They change when actors strategically intervene in them. Now, ask yourself, for the work that you are doing, where is the one deeper leverage point? Deeper. You may not reach the deepest point. You may not know yet what does it mean to actually affect paradigms in this particular problem, right? But how deep you can get in terms of leverage point that you can target with what you can do, with what you and your allies can do in the system that you are tackling tomorrow. And I want you to ask this question to yourself. And if you want to discuss your specific case or what you're doing, we're very happy to help as much as we can. You definitely know more about those particular contexts and the particular system that you may want to tackle, right? But if you need some moral support, we're here. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure as usual. I guess that we ended at a good time. We're trying to make these classes more participatory. Hopefully you like it. Hopefully you learn something from India, from Kenya. We want to hear from more of you over other classes. The resources should be actually posted online today. So you can actually go through the resources and ask more questions. Send us email too, please. We're not just gonna get them and forget about them. We're very happy to have longer conversations about this. We're looking for your contributions too. Thank you, and thank you, Leah, for moderating.